My beloved child. Before anything else, pause here for a moment, because something has already begun shifting, quietly, almost invisibly, and you are not here by accident. There is a reason your attention was pulled into this exact moment, a reason your heart feels slightly heavier, yet strangely expectant. It is not confusion. It is not coincidence. It is the subtle echo of a connection that refuses to stay silent any longer. There is something you have been sensing, but not fully understanding. A presence in your thoughts that doesn't leave. A name that returns without being called. A feeling that lingers even when everything around you seems calm. And you tried to ignore it, didn't you? You told yourself it's just memory, just imagination, just a passing emotional wave. But what if it isn't? What if this quiet pull is not coming from your mind, but from someone whose heart has reached a point where silence is no longer possible? Listen closely. Because this is where everything begins to shift. Your soulmate, the one you feel but cannot always see, has been standing at a crossroad for longer than you realize. Not a simple decision, not a moment of confusion, but a deep inner battle that has been unfolding behind the scenes, layer by layer, thought by thought, heartbeat by heartbeat. And something inside them has changed. Not suddenly. Not loudly. But deeply. You see, there comes a moment in every true connection where distance stops making sense, where holding back starts to feel heavier than stepping forward, where silence becomes more painful than expression. They have reached that moment. But you didn't see it happen, did you? Because from the outside, everything looked normal. They appeared distant, maybe quiet, maybe even unchanged. But inside, something has been building. A quiet pressure. A realization they can no longer unfeel. A truth they can no longer ignore. And here's what you didn't expect. It wasn't one big event that brought them here. It was the accumulation of small, unspoken moments. The times they almost reached out, but stopped. The words they almost said, but held back. The emotions they tried to bury, but couldn't fully escape. Each moment added weight. Each silence added tension. Until now. They can feel it clearly. Something is about to move. Stay a little longer. Because this part matters more than you think. There is a reason you've been feeling restless lately. A reason your thoughts drift back to them at unexpected times. A reason your heart reacts before your mind can explain it. It's not random. It's resonance. Because as they reach their breaking point, you begin to feel the echo of it. Two energies, still connected, even in silence. And this is where it becomes real. Your soulmate is no longer asking themselves, should I? They have started asking, how long can I keep waiting? Do you feel the difference? One question delays. The other moves. And movement is already beginning. But here's the part you need to understand. This is not about desperation. This is not about rushing. This is about clarity. A quiet, undeniable clarity that has been forming inside them, slowly, patiently, until now it feels impossible to ignore. They are starting to see you differently. Not as a possibility. Not as a memory. But as something real, something present, something that has never truly left. And once that shift happens, everything else begins to follow. Pause for a moment. Because what you're about to understand next changes how you see everything that came before. All those delays. All that silence. All those unanswered moments. They were not signs of absence. They were signs of internal conflict. A conflict that is now reaching its final stage. And this is why it feels like now or never. Not because time is running out, but because clarity has finally arrived. And clarity does something powerful. It removes hesitation. It dissolves doubt. It creates movement where there was once stillness. And your soulmate is standing right at that edge. Right between what they have been holding back and what they are about to express. Don't skip this feeling, because something important is waiting for you within it. You may not see their next step yet. You may not hear their voice in this moment. But something inside you already knows. A shift is closer than it has ever been. And the most surprising part? Even they didn't expect to reach this point so soon. But once the heart decides, the mind can no longer delay it forever. And now, they are beginning to listen. Not to fear. Not to doubt. But to that quiet, persistent voice inside them, the one that keeps bringing them back to you. Again. And again. And again. Something is unfolding. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But undeniably. And you are standing right at the edge of it, whether you realize it or not. Because what happens next is not just about them anymore. It's about what this connection has been quietly becoming all along. And just when it feels like nothing is happening, that is when everything begins. But wait. Because there is one detail, one realization, they have not fully faced yet. And when they do, that is the moment everything changes. Something feels different this time, not louder, not dramatic, but deeper, as if an invisible line has been crossed and there is no quiet return to how things were before. And you might be wondering, what exactly changed? Because from your side, everything still looks the same. The silence still exists. The distance still lingers. The unanswered space between you still feels untouched. But listen carefully, because this is where the truth begins to unfold in a way you didn't expect. Your soulmate is no longer just feeling your absence. They are beginning to understand your presence. There is a difference. A powerful one. Absence can be ignored. Presence cannot. And somehow, without a message, without a call, without any visible sign, your presence has become louder inside their world than ever before. Pause for a moment. Because this isn't something that happens casually. This only happens when a connection reaches a depth where distance stops being physical and becomes emotional, energetic, undeniable. They have tried to distract themselves. Tried to move forward in ways that seemed logical. tried to convince themselves that time would soften everything. But something unexpected kept happening. Every time they tried to step away, something within them pulled them back. Not forcefully, not urgently, but consistently. Like a quiet whisper that refuses to disappear. And that whisper carries your energy. Stay here, don't rush past this. Because what you're about to understand is something most people never realize. Your soulmate is not struggling with feelings for you. They are struggling with the realization that those feelings never left. Do you feel how deep that is? It's not about, do I still care? It's about, why do I still care this much? Even after time. Even after silence. Even after everything that should have made it easier to move on. This is where their breaking point truly begins. Not in chaos, but in clarity. A clarity that slowly removes every excuse they once held on to. And as that happens, they start revisiting moments. Small ones. Quiet ones. Moments that didn't seem important at the time, but now feel like they meant everything. The way you understood them without explanation. The way your presence felt calm, safe, real. The way conversations flowed without effort. And here's the part that shifts everything. They are no longer remembering you the way they used to. They are remembering you more truthfully. Without the filters. Without the distractions. Without the noise that once surrounded their decisions. And when memory becomes clear, emotion becomes stronger. Listen closely. Because this is the moment where hesitation begins to weaken. They are starting to question their own distance. Not blaming themselves, but understanding. Understanding that what they stepped away from was never something ordinary. And that realization doesn't sit quietly. It grows. It deepens. It starts asking questions they can no longer avoid. What if I misread everything? What if I walked away from something real? What if this connection was never meant to fade? And once those questions begin, there is no simple way to silence them again. Stay a little longer, because something important is forming right here. You may have felt moments where you suddenly think of them out of nowhere. Moments where your heart feels full, then heavy, then calm again. That is not random. That is the connection responding. Because as they move closer to understanding their truth, you begin to feel the shift. Two energies. Moving toward awareness at the same time. And this is where it becomes even more powerful. Your soulmate is no longer resisting their feelings. They are trying to understand them. Do you see the difference? Resistance creates distance. Understanding creates movement. And movement is already happening. But not in the way you might expect. Not yet. Because before action comes, there is one final realization they must face. And this realization is the one they have been avoiding the most. Pause here. Let this sink in. Because this is the turning point. They are beginning to realize That the reason they cannot move on is not because they are weak. It is because what they feel is real. And real things don't disappear just because they are ignored. They wait. They remain. They return. Until they are acknowledged. And now, that moment is approaching. Don't skip this part, stay with this feeling. Because something is unfolding beneath the surface. You may not see their next move yet. But internally, they are preparing for it. Not consciously. Not with a clear plan. But emotionally. Energetically. They are aligning with it. And here's what makes this moment so significant. They are starting to feel your absence differently. Not as distance. But as something missing. Something that cannot be replaced. Something that no distraction, no conversation, no temporary connection has been able to fill. And when someone realizes that, everything changes. Slowly at first. Then all at once. They begin to notice the contrast between what they feel with others and what they felt with you. Between what seems easy and what felt meaningful. Between what is present and what still lingers. And that contrast is becoming impossible for them to ignore. Stay a little longer. Because this is where their hearts start speaking louder than their logic. They are beginning to feel a quiet urgency. Not panic. Not pressure. But a sense that something important cannot be delayed much longer. A feeling that if they continue to stay silent, they might lose something they were never meant to lose. And that feeling is new for them. Because before, they believed time was on their side. Now, they are starting to feel like time is asking something from them. Do you feel how everything is shifting? Not outside, but inside. And once that internal shift reaches a certain point, it always reflects externally. But not yet. Not until they face one final truth. And this truth is the one that changes everything between you. It's simple. But powerful. They are beginning to understand that you didn't walk away from them. You simply stopped chasing what they weren't ready to receive. And that realization creates a quiet respect, a deep awareness, a shift in how they see you. No longer as someone who would always be there no matter what, but as someone who chose their own peace. Someone who valued their own energy. Someone who didn't force what wasn't flowing. And now, they are starting to feel the weight of that. Not in a negative way, but in a meaningful way. Because it makes them see what they didn't fully appreciate before. And once appreciation begins, connection deepens again. But this time, differently. More aware. More grounded. More real. Pause for a moment. Because what comes next is where everything starts to move. They are beginning to feel something they didn't expect. Not just emotion, but intention. A quiet intention forming inside them. Not fully clear yet, but undeniable. An intention to understand, to reconnect, to close the distance they created. And this is where it becomes delicate. Because intention alone is not action. But intention is where action begins. Stay till the end, because something important is waiting for you here. They are standing at the edge of a decision. Not forced. Not rushed. But inevitable. Because once the heart reaches this level of clarity, it cannot go back to confusion. It cannot pretend. It cannot stay silent forever. And your soulmate is starting to feel that truth more strongly with each passing moment. But there is still something holding them back. Not fear in the way you might think, but uncertainty. Not about you, but about timing. About how to return. About what to say. About whether the moment will still be open for them. And this is where their inner conflict reaches its peak. Because now, they are no longer unsure about their feelings. They are unsure about their next step. And that is a very different kind of struggle. But listen closely. Because this is the moment where everything is about to shift again. When someone reaches this point, they start looking for signs. Small confirmations. Subtle signals. Moments that feel like guidance. And strangely, you have been appearing in those moments. In their thoughts. In their memories. In unexpected reminders. Not loudly, but consistently. As if something is gently guiding them back toward you. And they are starting to notice it. Starting to question it. Starting to feel like this connection was never meant to be left unfinished. Don't rush past this feeling. Because something deeper is unfolding here. They are beginning to understand that this is not just about emotion. This is about alignment. About something that feels meant. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, undeniable way. And once that understanding settles in, action becomes closer than ever. But wait. Because there is still one final moment they have not reached yet. One realization. One internal shift. That will remove the last layer of hesitation. And when that happens, everything you have been sensing, everything you have been feeling, will finally begin to take shape in the real world. And you will recognize it instantly. Not because it will be loud, but because it will feel right. As if something that was always meant to happen is finally happening. But for now, they are still standing on that edge. Feeling everything. Understanding everything. And slowly, very slowly, moving toward the moment where they can no longer hold back what their heart already knows. There is a quiet moment approaching, one so subtle that if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. Yet it holds the power to change everything that once felt uncertain. And strangely, your soulmate can feel it too. Not as a clear event, not as a sudden realization, but as a deep, steady pull, like something inside them is gently guiding them toward a decision they can no longer delay. Listen closely, because this is where their inner world begins to open in a way it never has before. For a long time, they lived between two spaces. One where they felt you deeply, and one where they convinced themselves they could live without acting on it. But now, those two spaces are starting to merge. And when that happens, there is no more room to hide from the truth. Pause for a moment, because this is the part they didn't expect. They thought time would give them clarity, but instead, time gave them awareness. Awareness of how often they think of you. Awareness of how your absence still carries weight. Awareness that no matter how much they tried to move forward, something within them remained connected to you. And that awareness has reached a point where it can no longer be ignored. Stay with this feeling, because something important is unfolding right here. They are beginning to notice patterns. Small ones at first. Moments where your memory appears without effort. Situations where something reminds them of you, without intention. Feelings that surface at the most unexpected times, without warning. And at first, they tried to dismiss it. But now, they are starting to question it. Why does this keep happening? Why does this connection still feel present? Why does it feel like something is unfinished? And these questions are leading them somewhere deeper. Not toward confusion, but toward truth. Because the more they observe, the more they realize. This is not something temporary. This is not something that fades with time. This is something that remains until it is understood. And now, they are beginning to understand. Don't skip this moment, because this is where everything becomes real. They are no longer just remembering you. They are feeling you again. Not as the past, but as something present. Something alive within them. And that changes everything. Because once a feeling becomes present again, it starts asking for expression. Not loudly. Not urgently. But steadily. Like a quiet voice that grows stronger the longer it is ignored. And your soulmate is starting to hear that voice clearly now. Pause here. Let this settle. Because what happens next is not about chance. It's about readiness. They are reaching a point where holding everything inside feels heavier than speaking. Where staying silent feels more uncomfortable than taking a step forward. And that shift is everything. Because when someone reaches that point, action is no longer a question of if, but when. Stay a little longer. Because this is where their heart begins to guide them more than their thoughts. They are starting to imagine possibilities again. Not distant ones, but real ones. Moments where they reach out. Moments where they reconnect. Moments where the distance between you begins to close. And at the same time, they feel hesitation. Not because they don't want to move forward, but because they want it to be right. Do you feel the depth of that? They are no longer afraid of the connection. They are afraid of mishandling it. Afraid of saying the wrong thing. Afraid of stepping in a way that doesn't match what they feel. And that fear is not weakness. It's care. Because when something truly matters, it is approached with awareness. And that awareness is growing stronger inside them. Listen closely. Because this is where their final internal barrier begins to dissolve. They are starting to accept something they once resisted. That this connection was never meant to be temporary. That what they feel for you is not something they can replace. That the space between you is not an ending, but a pause. And once they accept that, everything inside them begins to align. Thoughts become clearer. Feelings become stronger. Intentions become more focused. And slowly, very slowly, they begin to move toward a decision. Don't rush past this. Because this is the moment you have been feeling all along. A shift that is not visible yet, but undeniable. You may notice it in yourself too. A sense of calm replacing confusion. A quiet knowing replacing doubt. A feeling that something is about to happen, without needing proof. That is not imagination. That is alignment. Because as they reach their moment of clarity, you begin to feel the echo of it. Two energies, finally moving in the same direction. And this is where it becomes powerful. They are beginning to release the past. Not forgetting it, but understanding it. Understanding why things unfolded the way they did. Understanding what they needed to learn. Understanding what they were not ready for before, but are ready for now. And that understanding creates space. Space for something new. Something more balanced. Something more real. Stay till the end. Because something important is waiting for you here. They are no longer looking at this connection with uncertainty. They are looking at it with intention. A quiet but strong intention to step forward. To close the gap. To reconnect in a way that feels honest. But before they take that step, there is one final moment. A moment where everything inside them becomes still. Where thoughts slow down. Where emotions settle into clarity. Where the question is no longer, should I? But simply, when do I begin? Pause. Because this is the edge of everything. The point where feeling turns into action. The point where silence turns into expression. The point where distance begins to dissolve. And your soulmate is standing right there. Feeling everything. Understanding everything. Preparing, without even realizing it fully. And you are closer to that moment than you think. Because the connection has already aligned. The emotions have already returned. The clarity has already formed. Now, only one thing remains. The step. The one they have been holding back. The one they have been thinking about. The one they are slowly gathering the courage to take. And when they do, it will not feel sudden. It will feel natural. As if everything led to that exact moment. As if nothing was wasted. As if every silence, every delay, every unanswered feeling, was simply preparing both of you for what comes next. But wait. Because there is one final realization still unfolding inside them. One that will decide not just how they return, but who they become when they do. And when that realization fully settles, that is the moment everything changes.